We asked for it, and we got it. Was it worth it? Was it worth all 4 hours and 2 minutes of it? On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss Zack Snyder's Justice League. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and I've united the team once again. Welcome back, Chad Smith, Tim Williams, and Blake Fowler.
Man, how's everybody doing?
Excellent, fellas. How are y'all?
Good. So glad to be a part once again.
I've seen the Zack Snyder cut, and I have a lot of feelings, so I'm very excited to share them with you all.
Is it not the Snyder cut anymore? I mean, the movie is titled Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. But.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Yeah, and after seeing it, I was like, because this was supposed to be a one-shot. This was supposed to be just our reaction to the Snyder cut.
Yeah, right.
And then we watched this, and I was like, nope, this has got to be a full episode. That's a whole different movie. This isn't a reaction. Yep. We're talking about a whole new movie.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to start yet. I want to wait until you hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah. I have a lot of things to say, so let's do this.
Just the beginning. So assuming that the listener has heard our take on the original theatrical version, this immediately, literally, was a much better movie. Right. I mean, who knows how much money they spent on that opening shot of Superman's death gasp actually awakening the boxes and all that sort of stuff. It was brilliant. Way, way, way better than mush face CGI mustache mess.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get this out of the way for people listening that may not, because the movie literally dropped yesterday as of this recording. It was Thursday, March 18th. It's on HBO Max. It is 4 hours and 2 minutes long. It is split into 7 parts. Well, there's the opening that Chad's talking about. Then it's 7 parts, and then an epilogue with an epilogue with an epilogue. We have all watched it. But just in case you haven't, we're going to go ahead and put it here. This is your spoiler warning, because this is a different movie.
Yes.
So there be spoilers.
Even if you have seen the 2017 Justice League, there are spoilers.
You have not seen the Justice League.
And stick around for each episode as we go through each chapter. So just totally joking.
So for the next 2 hours, we're going to cover part 1.
This podcast will be 7 hours long.
I almost feel like you could do that, but
do a whole separate podcast just on the Justice, an 8-part series breaking down Zack Snyder's Justice League. All right, so let's do it like a regular episode here on Moving Panels. So let's talk characters first and how the characters changed, and we'll do it in the same order we did it last week. So let's start off with Batman. What did you guys think of Batman in this version of Justice League?
It was the same Batman through the entire movie. He wasn't a different size and different shades of gray in his hair. It was Batman and Bruce Wayne the entire movie. I'll just start there.
So I'll actually chip in that some of the things that I liked about the theatrical movie that got cut, I actually liked that they were cut. That I wouldn't have if you'd have told me ahead of time. If you said that scene at his house under the lake, whatever it is, with him and Diana, that was kind of the heart of the theatrical movie. Mm-hmm. And so when I realized that we had passed that point in the new movie, I was kind of like, that's interesting. Where are they going to kind of go with, how are they going to rebuild that momentum that you get from that scene? Mm-hmm. But they didn't need to, because they were actually doing something we like to call character development, with other characters. So,
right.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That was my thing, was that we got to see more of Bruce, Batman, whatever you want to say, like figuring out how to get this team together. Yeah. Last week we talked about how he just shows up in that Nordic, land looking for Aquaman. This one kind of explained it.
Yes, I was very happy about that.
It was as simple as saying, like, the storm came through and the helicopter's not able to land. I was like, oh, okay, I can buy into that now, that he had to trek in on horseback.
Yeah, was I the only person, like, checking off things that we discussed and saying, oh, they answered that part. Oh, they answered that part.
Just about everything we said that the theatrical cut needed, this one added.
Oh, man, it was great. I did, going back just for a second to the whole him going on horseback thing. His Han Solo on Hoth outfit as he saddled up. I was like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Nice homage.
Gotta do what you
I
gotta do
guess
to
when
get to
you're
the
a
Aquaman.
billionaire, you get to nerd out even when you're, questing across Iceland or whatever. So
I will say my thing was they explained that the storms had prevented the helicopter, and how did he get here? He says he climbed over the mountain, and they chuckle at that. Well, then when Aquaman blows him off, I'm almost thinking, is Bruce standing there going, well, I guess I got to go back over the mountain now.
Yeah, how did he get back out of there, right? You have to trek back over again?
Right.
yeah, no kid. So I like that Batman does not. Again, I'm just going to hit the beginning of the movie. I like that he's not fighting the parademons right off the bat.
Yes.
Batman is building this team for a threat that he believes is coming, but doesn't yet have, intelligence of. He doesn't know what's happening. So he spends, I don't know, the first third of the movie in the dark trying to build this team, and it kind of alludes to that he's going off of some stuff he heard from Lex Luthor and all this.
Right.
But that was far more interesting to me than the weird boxes on the wall from the blasted parademon mess. So that was far more compelling.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly that. Is that what I really enjoyed about the beginning of this one is it tied very well with Batman v Superman, especially with that opening scene. I know we're not talking about Superman yet, but that opening scene put me right back in the ending of Batman v Superman, where I was kind of already invested from that moment. And then, cutting where you're talking about what Batman's saying, Lex said the enemy's coming at the gates, or whatever the gates line is there.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, you're tying these two movies together very well, which once again takes me back to that movie and remembering everything that happened to get us to that point, which made much more sense than the 2017 Justice League.
Yeah, and I do plan on getting back to that opening when we get into the moving panel section. There is a lot about that opening that I want to talk about.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think throughout the movie, I just like that Batman or Bruce, believe it or not, is operating on faith.
Yes.
Like he has said, I'm going to depend on these other people to do what they're capable of and trust that the situation will take care of itself as best these people see fit, these metahumans see fit. Like he's built this team, and he now trusts that this team is going to get the job done, which is a far cry from what he was in Batman v Superman. But again, like Tim was talking about, that connection to the movie, we're not only seeing his development in this movie, but his development from Batman v Superman on to now, which was awesome to see.
Yeah, and I love that he yells that out to Alfred when he tells Alfred he's going to come.
Such a cool line. Oh.
And he goes, well, how do you know? And he goes, faith.
Oh, man.
Faith, Alfred, or whatever, And I love he throws his arms out like that. Like, come on, I got this.
That's one of the moments in the movie where I like sat up watching it and just like kind of got the blood pumping for the next part 27 or whatever it is we made it to after that.
All right, so let's move on to Wonder Woman. I'm going to go ahead and get into something with Wonder Woman that I actually didn't like. So her introduction scene, pretty much the exact same as it was in the theatrical cut. Couple of little extra moments, but it was roughly the same. My thing was when the guy is about to shoot one last time, she does the bracelet clang together, and she blows out the entire floor of the building.
Yeah.
So I'll actually kind of disagree with you a little bit. So two things. That scene is way further into this film than it was in the theatrical. And I do get that we're talking about a 4-hour movie versus a 2-hour movie, but still, I think even percentage-wise of movie, it's much further into the movie than it was in the theatrical one. And there's a lot more minutes in that movie, and if you go back and watch, because I did this right after I finished it, I went back and watched the theatrical one because that scene stood out to me. They cut those shots a lot shorter to make her less violent. That scene is much longer, and she is straight up murdering people in the in the new movie, you see these guys' heads getting caved in on the wall when she tosses them like little rag dolls and everything. It's far more brutal, and I thought that was an interesting take on the character.
Yeah, she certainly with no disregard or no regard for human life in there on those guys, and I'm sure we probably all thought this watching it, but so she bracelets the leader, the boss, into dust. She Thanos'd him essentially, and the little girl, she goes to the little girl's like, "Can I be like you when I grow up?" Like a murdering Amazon woman. That's who you want to be when you grow up. But then I realized, like, the little girl's like, "Can I be a strong, powerful, confident woman? Like, that's who I want to be. I aspire to be like Wonder Woman." And I couldn't help but thinking, like, Joss Whedon saw that moment and cut it. It was like, this is not a cool moment. Let's not do this.
I got to tell you, as much as a huge Buffy fan, and Joss Whedon, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, kind of got this stigma of he was good with female empowerment and whatnot. He was even tied to the Wonder Woman movie for actually a little while. Seeing his version of Wonder Woman versus Zack's version of Wonder Woman, I'm going, yeah, Joss didn't respect Wonder Woman at all.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
She has a much better arc in this.
Yes.
Which again,
absolutely.
just
Yeah,
like,
that's what I was getting into.
Just like with Batman, they took away some of the moments that you thought gave the theatrical movie heart, or did give that movie heart, but without those, it allowed for this development that you didn't see otherwise. And also, they didn't try to make her funny, which didn't work in the first movie.
Yes, I agree.
So all the little weird throwaway lines that she had, cutting a joke, were gone, and she's this serious Amazon warrior, which works for that character. It made it much more, I don't know if believable is the right word, because it's still pretty unbelievable, but it made it a more human character than just kind of this weird thing that you don't know what to do with.
Yeah.
Well, what were your thoughts about her when she, becomes Indiana Jones or Lara Croft, whatever you want to say there? What'd you think about when she goes into that tomb, whatever you want to call it, and kind of unlocks the story, if you will, which she then later tells, kind of explains how she all of a sudden knows the whole story about the mother boxes. So what do you think about that?
I thought that was great. I thought that, number one, the Amazon shooting the arrow that had a message on it, instead of it just being, when she sees this thing on fire, she's going to know that we need help. So there was a lot in the old version that you're just supposed to accept that she knows what's going on, where in this one it was much more laid out in the sense of, there's a message here that's leading to this. It was a little bit drawn out, but I appreciated it more because, once again, and maybe watching this, knowing what she was going to learn made more sense. I was thinking about, if this was a first time watch, would I really understand what she's seeing on those walls? But because I knew what the mother boxes were already, I was kind of putting the pieces together. But I did appreciate that building of her discovering it, so then when she explains it to Bruce later, you kind of already have an understanding of how she came to know that it wasn't just common knowledge back where she comes from.
I think we can probably all agree, and we'll probably say this over and over again, the exposition and characterization in this movie are, no pun intended, leaps and bounds better than the theatrical cut. And to Tim's point, her going in there and Indiana Jones again. First of all, she did like a 10 to 20 foot drop in heels. That's impressive, Diana Prince. Like, kudos to you. But that gives the story and her understanding of what's going on a little more believability, instead of just her coming back like, I saw a fire, Darkseid's coming. Like, that's how I know that's connected.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think it is important to recognize that that's a twofold reason, though. This movie is literally twice as long as the theatrical version. So, I mean, he had more time to do exposition, but also it's clear vision. Like, it is twofold. It's because you had two storytellers the first time around, and it really muddied the story. So, getting to see it clearly through, but also just time was on his side, so
Speaking of time, let's go into the Flash, shall we?
Nice.
Yeah. Talk about a character that benefited from this version.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Oh, my goodness. We got to see more of his abilities right off the bat, and then we got to see them develop throughout the movie.
We got less jokes. It
Yes.
didn't work.
Yeah.
very appreciative of that.
We got to actually see him be intelligent and show that he's got the smarts. I absolutely love that. But I was going to go back to with the abilities and all. I absolutely loved when he's rescuing all of the people that were kidnapped from Star Labs, and the building is collapsing, and they do almost like it's a lightning storm going on over top of them as he's knocking away all of the rubble. Yeah. It's just a very cool shot.
Yeah, I like the fact that, too, in that scene, so in the theatrical cut, he's terrified. Like, he is mortified to even be there. And in this cut, he's maybe not confident, but he's at least a little more assertive in how he's going about.
We get to see him become a hero.
You go. Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. And that was a cool thing to see. Like Chad said, not as many awful jokes that don't work, enough comedy with his character to make him likable. And then it's something that's probably petty, but he's such a better runner in this movie. Okay, his running form is so much better than in the theatrical cut, which I appreciated very much. But again, benefited from the amount of time that we had with this cut, and it was great for the movie.
Yeah, and I like that we got somewhat of an answer to something that Laramy asked in the last episode about the Lois and him coming through in the vision, as Bruce Wayne was saying. So I was like, I thought that was cool. They brought that back up to prove that we were wrong. But I also think that was that still was not for this Justice League movie. That was still a seed for what's coming, something darker, as they said. But I will talk about one scene that I appreciated. We're kind of talking about the Flash, but one scene that bothered me a lot in the original was the scene of the Flash and Cyborg digging up Clark Kent and Superman's body. That's just them. And then for them to add Aquaman and Wonder Woman in that scene gave it much more context, and I actually enjoyed that scene more this time, instead of saying, and he even made this comment, we could do this in a nanosecond, right? And so, because everybody thought that, why do you have the Flash digging a grave when he could do it so quickly? So, and I kind of wondered, was that in the original cut that I just missed that line?
No, and you also get that little kind of touching moment where the Flash is like, you think Diana would go for a younger guy, And I felt like it gave Cyborg a moment to be funny, but not like ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like every time he's funny in the theatrical version, it's just way over the top, goofy humor, which doesn't work. He plays that character so straight, that it doesn't work. So this was funny. He just gets to kind of very low key be like, yeah, she's 5,000 years old. Everybody's younger. It's like, So,
but once again, and kind of going back to Blake's point about, just the characterization and developing, having that scene to me solidified them as a team instead of in the other cut where it was just the two of them, where it felt like, oh, we're the outcasts. We're not the big three. We're not Superman, Batman, Aquaman. We're kind of the guys up in training, so we get the manual labor. That's the way I read it in the earlier one, where this one, it's like, no, we're all here working together and building camaraderie, where it becomes more believable later when they're really gelling as a team.
Yeah, and I like that, what you said about, the Flash is saying, I could do this in a nanosecond, and Cyborg kind of looks at it and goes, you could. And it's kind of like going, we need to respect this man.
Being respectful. Yeah, absolutely.
Even when they load him into the back of the car, and they're all four standing there, they pause for a moment. And it's just, again, that respect and acknowledgement of, we know what we're doing. We're sorry, for this, Clark, that we've raided your grave and dug you back up, but we really need you. And it was a second, but I got all of that from that 1 second. Yep.
Beautiful.
We also, talking about something that we mentioned in last week's episode, where Chad was going, and when did he learn how to time travel? In this movie, he learned how to time travel in this movie.
That was one of my favorite parts. I was so ecstatic. I was like, thank you. Flash has a moment in this movie, and it was awesome.
And they even gave you good reasoning. Like,
yes,
you have
exactly.
the scene where they're waking Superman, and he's like, yeah, weird stuff happens when I approach the speed of light, and everything. And you see it happen in that scene. It sets it up for the end of the movie. So it was so well done in that sense. So you don't have to jump to the end to go, wait a minute, like, how does he all of a sudden know how to do this? And I really enjoyed that. I'm with you guys too.
Yeah, the same thing. That's exactly what I was going to say. The scene with the mother box and Clark Kent there, and just that split second where it starts rising back up out of the water is such a hair-raising moment to then set up the end of the movie where he kind of puts everything together. And it was just, such a...
Literally.
Literally puts it together. Again, one of those moments where I found myself, after slouching while watching, sitting back up on the edge of my seat, watching that happen and thinking like, this is my childhood come to life on screen right here. Like, how cool is this?
For sure.
All right, let's move on to Aquaman. My initial take on Aquaman in this one is I liked how they really built on... Is he or will he join the team? Is he when's he's gonna show up? They really built up on that, and they don't just have that random moment. As much as we joked about, it's a bat, dig it.
Yeah,
that was such a random moment that he just shows up on the rooftop and says that. I like that they cut that out. They give him his heroic, show up moment. That he shows up at just the right time and does what's needed. Absolutely love that. But here's my question. I didn't think about this the first time around. I don't know if he did it more in this one with it being longer. Where is he getting his shirts if he takes his shirt off every time he jumps into the water?
The village people are knitting them, obviously. They're just knitting them and he's taking them.
And does a mid-20s young lady have to come down and put her face bizarrely into the shirt?
And smell it, yeah.
I wasn't the only one creeped out a little bit by that scene? It was a little strange.
It was a little...
And she clearly held on to it because he's wearing the same thing in the epilogue. Yeah. He's wearing that same sweater and all in the epilogue.
That might be his his dry cleaner. She comes down and gets his stuff and gets it ready for the next time he's there, while serenading him with Nordic Icelandic tunes as he escapes into the water.
So she was just smelling it to see how much dirt.
How
deeply do I need to clean this sweater? That's what that scene was about. Yeah, I'm with you.
How much OxyClean am I having flown in for this?
Horrible.
Oh man, it was super weird.
Yeah, but going again, I want to point out as many of these as we can. Going back to last week, I believe it was Tim that was like, where did Aquaman get his suit? Well, we get told in this movie. I was
so happy.
We know exactly where he got his suit.
And the trident, because at one point he didn't have it, and then all of a sudden he did have it. I was like, that's where he got the trident. And good for Willem Dafoe for having his
finally. Yes.
But also, you got a reason why he joined the team.
Right, exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, he got his stuff, but this gave so much better character development. And you understand now, he showed up at the last minute to defend the box and got his butt handed to him, and he realizes what's at stake all of a sudden and starts seeing the wisdom in what Bruce Wayne is doing.
And we keep talking about time in this movie has allowed characterization, but I really felt like Aquaman was a character in the theatrical cut who could have been characterized better because he's just a jerk in the theatrical cut, essentially. There's a scene between him and... I can't remember if it's the Flash or Cyborg, where he's trying to find the mother box in the theatrical cut. And Aquaman's just a jerk to him. Tell him to hurry up. Let's do that. You need to hurry up and do this. Where in the Zack Snyder's Justice League, he's a lot more understanding. He gets that everybody's doing what they can to help the situation. And we talk about humanizing these characters as much as we can. This cut humanized him as opposed to making him just a rear end to everybody.
Well, but it does start off because he questions Cyborg right off the bat. Like, how do we know you're not involved in it? But then as Cyborg then explains everything and shows everything, like Chad's saying, we get that moment of Aquaman going, all right, yep, I respect you. Let's do this, All right, well, we're talking about Cyborg, and oh my dear Lord, he is the backbone of this movie.
Without question.
Yeah, he clearly was the one that benefited the most from this recut.
Yes.
So, hands down. And that scene you were just talking about is one of the key moments. Like, when you get to go into his vision and see, it gave you a reason for these weird mother boxes in the first one that are never really explained and are still just this bizarre magic cube that we're supposed to buy into. But you also just got kind of who he is through that and opening himself up to the team a little bit, really giving a reason why they should trust him, all that sort of stuff. It was such a better scene than you got in the theatrical one.
And I love that they give him more of a backstory.
Yes.
He's not just some random dude who his dad happened to be a scientist. We not only get to see him be the athlete, but I love just the moment we find out he was a computer whiz even before. He hacks into the school system. Yeah. And then when he listens to the first half of his dad's recording, and we get to find out about kind of it reminded me so much of Superman, and even what we got to see later with Superman, his dad being the voice and, who he's listening to, and him learning how his powers work, but also him going against what his dad's saying. It's a matter of not doing this, and then we see him give that, woman $100,000.
Yeah.
Because we've gotten that moral compass of him. He's willing to break the rules to do what he believes is right. And so we got that. And I just absolutely loved Cyborg in this movie. Ray Fisher is amazing. I really hope if they can rejuvenate this extended universe now, that he will come back. I really want him to come back.
Well, and I mean, even his, not to downplay anything that did get opened up with Cyborg, but I just wanted to throw out there that his dad has such a better arc in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and that actor was so wasted in the theatrical one. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Joe Morton.
Yeah, he's such a great actor and was so just utterly underused in that role. And then to see it really pay off in this one. I mean, really pay off. And it was such a good scene because, in the theatrical version, you just see the beam of light come down on the Kryptonian ship and they just cut to the next scene. Well, he's got all the cubes now. What are we going to do? And this gave that so much more heart. So much more heart.
I agree. Going back to the, since we're still on Cyborg, so it's actually great to see Victor Stone as Victor Stone instead of just seeing him as Cyborg. So all those scenes where you saw him in his Letterman jacket and all those scenes, it made him more human, where in the other version, it was just a machine. I never understood the human side of him. And then even that scene where it showed him being created by his father or, reborn was fascinating. Like that scene was amazing, and it gave such depth to this person and this character that I cared about him where I didn't really care about him in the first one.
Well, and my thing, you're talking about seeing him when we, like Chad was saying, when we go into his mind and he's Victor in his mind. There was even an arc there, because when it happens at the very end, when he goes inside of the mother boxes, he sees Victor, himself as Victor, he sees his parents, and, they're trying to get him to give in, and he comes to terms with who he is, and we see him actually turn into Cyborg in that scene.
Another amazing scene.
And he's accepting who he is. Yeah,
which is infinitely better than the theatrical version where he just is making jokes and with Superman while trying to divide this thing up. That whole setup,
having a tug of war.
That whole setup was so much. I mean, just you cannot compare the two. It is so much better.
Yeah, I don't know how many of y'all or how many of the listeners are on Twitter, but Ray Fisher has been championing this since 2017. Like, if we've got anybody to thank for this, I would probably say it's Ray Fisher. Ray Fisher knew what was there, what this movie could have been, and from the sound of it, what all he had to deal with on set to still stick to this and want to, because he knew what we're all talking about, that Cyborg was the heart of the movie. Like, Cyborg was the guy that ties everything together, that made this movie what the Snyder cut was. So, Ray, kudos to Ray Fisher.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me point out, too, that, so I think it was Laramy last week when we were talking about the original movie, you're looking at that Diana is the heart of that movie, kind of. But she does not, it's not that it dissipates her to make Cyborg the heart of the movie. She's this, it made her stronger. She's just a stronger warrior. She really, you really kind of see her being able to go toe-to-toe with Superman a little bit better, that sort of thing. She benefits from it, too, in a way that I don't think you could foresee if somebody just told you this was the way it was going to go, kind of thing.
Right.
So to go a completely different route with Cyborg, I wanted to ask this because I am pretty sure these never appeared in the theatrical cut. What'd you think of his little like extending arms, like his little spider arms that would come out?
I could have done without it.
That was kind of my thought too. I was like, oh, that looks a little weird.
Didn't super detract from it, but Chad's right. Could have been done without.
It was, for me, it was a little too reminiscent of Spider-Man's Iron Suit.
Spider.
Yeah. So
what about the fact? So I know they get to the fact that pretty much everything that's technological is under his control, but does that include just being able to repair a shattered tape recorder that is also consisted of plastic
that one was interesting. Just can all of a sudden change matter. Is that though some of the mother box left over in him? Because I mean that's what it is explained to do.
Yeah, that's how I kind of interpreted that.
Yeah,
so
that's true. I didn't think about that. I did get a kick out of the fact that when they get to the Batcave little area and he sees the big carrier that Bruce has been working on throughout the movie, and he was like, she's broken. She wants to fly. I love that it's Aquaman who says, "You can talk to machines." Like going, considering he's always the one made fun of for being able to talk to fish. Yeah, I did get that. So, we didn't get our booyah. He doesn't say booyah.
Thank goodness.
In this,
Thank you, Zack Snyder.
in this cut.
Yeah. Praise.
He
praise
also,
me.
even though I really thought it was about to happen at the very end when he visits the graves, and right before he takes off, he doesn't change into the comic book look like he did at the end of the original movie.
I think that's because there's more.
I don't
there was
know.
supposed to be more coming. Like he was going to get that later on. I think.
I don't know. That was something I kind of wanted. I kind of wanted to see him. He's accepted who he was. He's realizing he's cyborg. And when he knelt down right before he took off, blasted off into the sky, just to see his suit kind of smooth out and the red circle on his chest. I think that still would have been pretty cool to see happen. Y'all got nothing on that.
I really don't care.
No strong
Sorry.
opinions there.
That's like I said, well, I think you've heard Snyder talk, and now that so I did some obviously reading after watching it, and he's talked about what all he was planning on setting up, and part of it was that Cyborg storyline where he takes on the mantle and look that we all know and love. So I wish that could come later. Who knows? Maybe it will now. Never say never.
Yeah, and we're going to get into the possible future of this towards the end. But let's go ahead and hit our last member of the Justice League. The one who, what was it, like 2 hours into the movie before he shows up? Superman.
But, and I'm glad we talked about this, it made much more sense in this version that he was still there, or the character was still there even before they brought him back. Like, in the original, it almost seemed like a last thought. Like, we just need to bring Superman back. It was like a light bulb moment where I felt in this one, it was being told to us all along, like, don't forget about Superman. Don't forget about this promise we made. Don't forget about... We were constantly being reminded, I think, better in this one than...
Yeah, but at the same time, they weren't immediately saying we need to bring Superman back. They were going about it as if they had to do this without Superman. It's not until they have that discussion and find out what the mother boxes can do until you all of a see all of them look at each other. And of course, Flash goes, I know we're all thinking the same thing.
So I wanted to point out that I think Cyborg already had that idea. I think he's actually leading everybody to that conclusion.
Yeah.
And he lets Flash kind of set it up, and then you see him,
hologram
Superman there. Yeah. I kind of got the feeling that he was already ahead of them a couple of steps at that point.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, his return was done a lot better in this film, I think, and his moments with Lois and his mother on the farm were done a lot better. There was a lot more emotional punch to those.
Well, it's nice when you can see the actor's face.
Yeah. Okay. Ooh, yikes.
Yeah.
Hot
I love that
take
there was
there.
no CGI mouth in this
Yes.
So that was pretty cool, and I don't know if we're going to get into it in a minute, but the moment he shows up to the fight and the "I'm not impressed" line, oh man, okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad we all had the same reaction there.
Yeah, that was. I mean, as much as I loved him flying in the original, and you get the, you know, I mentioned this last week's episode, the, you know, dun da da, when he flies in, you know, it's very iconic. This one was just epic.
Yeah.
Just to show up, get hit by the axe, stand there and go, not impressed, and then just lightly blow on the axe, freezes it and shatters it.
I agree.
This was great.
Loved it.
What about the fight though? When he first shows up, he is dominant in what we had seen before. He is brutal in this scene though.
Yeah.
Just absolutely brutal.
He gave Steppenwolf a haircut there at one point in time.
Yeah. But no, that battle with the Justice League, you know, when it all of a sudden I'm going, ooh, that they're going a little extra with this, and
it was just like the Wonder Woman scene in the sense that it was mostly just extended shots where you could tell that Joss had just cut these down once he got a hold of them, you know, probably for time to give the man a fair due or whatever. But yeah, Superman's way more brutal, and the instead of just kind of tossing Bruce to the side, for one, I actually appreciated that he doesn't remember who Batman is. Because in the other one, you know, he remembers who Batman is even before Lois shows up on the scene. So he already was kind of coming back around. So you don't get that payoff that Lois is the key, that why he starts coming back. But also you didn't get the cheesy line where Superman repeats back to Batman, "Do you bleed?"
Goodness.
You know, so we avoided all of that, which was nice.
Yeah. And I'm getting thankful we didn't have bring in the big guns whole setup that was from before. Having, I know we're not talking, I guess we're talking about Superman, so we're talking about Lois. That development of her character.
kind of already be there.
Development of her character where for that day to be the day that she was going back to work, that she was going to move on, and then she hears the sound, she sees him floating above the old ship.
I love that she sees him. I
so then when
that
fight's going, I'm like, she's going to show up. And then when she shows up, it was like, thank you. This is how you set this scene up instead of just them showing up in a police car, however they came in the last one.
Alfred brought
them, right.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. I think the word is organic.
Yes.
It was a lot more organic occurring than what'd you say, Chuck? Bring in the big guns, Alfred. Like, oh, okay, that's, didn't enjoy that. This happened very naturally. It was set up. This is a monument she goes to every day almost.
Right.
So she's going to be there. So it was so well done. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah. Just going back to Superman though, and again, I'm the big Superman fan, so anything is gonna trigger me. But him walking through the ship. First off, when they bring his body, I don't remember this from the original. When they bring his body in and the ship is reacting, awesome. And Flash says the ship knows he's here.
Okay, so comic book nerd me was hoping that Zack Snyder would go full comic book and that there would be the hologram though. The Justice League was going to have to fight the hologram Superman that protects Superman's body in the comic books, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, but I love them when he goes back to the ship and we're seeing the ship open up and reveal all the suits as he's walking down, but then you're hearing the back and forth between Jor-El and Jonathan.
Wonderful.
Just I got to tell you, I got teary-eyed. I really did. Both times that I watch it, I have watched this movie twice.
All right, Kevin Smith.
All 4 hours. I have watched this movie twice. I watched it Thursday, and then I actually watched it right before we recorded. I got home from work. I looked at the clock, and I was like, I got time to fit in this entire movie before we record.
Nice.
And I watched it again. But both times, when he's walking through... you're hearing Jonathan. Because real quick, the thing with Jonathan, there's something I actually don't like. When they remove his body from the casket, none of them are respectful to that picture of Jonathan, and they just let it fall into the water, which I have a problem with. I get the visual of it, but I have a problem with that. If you had seen maybe Aquaman, since he's the one that removes the body, had just picked it up and set it to the side, and then maybe it gets blown off
as Flash comes by, maybe.
Yeah, But again, when he's walking through, you hear Jor-El, you hear Jonathan, and then of course you don't see it, but you see because their suits coming out, and he passes the blue suit, and then obviously another door opens. And, you're going, oh, this is the black suit. And then they open that door, and he comes out of the fog, and he's in the black suit. Loved it.
Okay.
Teary-eyed, chills. Loved it.
I'm just going to call it. Is the black suit being throughout the rest of the film, is that Zack Snyder just giving a big old fat middle finger to Warner Brothers?
Gotta be, right?
I mean,
he wore it the whole time, even after he was like rejuvenated and healed.
Yeah, that's
he
what I'm
still
saying.
wore it.
Yeah, because that was my thing. I didn't mind it through the whole battle with Steppenwolf and all that. I got it. He's, it's for people who don't know in the comics, it's his rejuvenation suit. It's supposed to absorb the sunlight more, which they show. Mm-hmm. They show him, fly up and stand there.
Another cool shot.
Stretch his arms out, or not stand there, but fly. Yeah, and you see the sun. So I was fine with that. I gotta admit, I'm a little. The big, Christopher Reeve, shirt rip open that he does at the end, I kind of wanted to see the blue and red.
Yeah, that's kind of why I think it was Zack Snyder kind of giving him a little bit of,
little what for?
I'm not super happy about what you guys did to me. So I do think there was a little bit of that.
Yeah, and then he's wearing the blue suit in the epilogue when he's the evil Superman.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, in the Nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah,
in the Nightmare. Yeah.
I love the black suit. Just as a last point there. So
I will point out though, you just said the last member of the Justice League. There is a seventh member of the Justice League.
I'm getting into that. That's exactly where I was going. So last week we talked about how they said unite the seven in that famous poster. But there were only 6. This movie gave us our 7th, although he doesn't officially join until the very end. He just says, I'm here if you need me. And Bruce, tells him, we can use all the help. But that is, we do get Martian Manhunter.
Mm-hmm. Chad was right. No, I super enjoy that actor. I'm really glad that portion came true. I was a little bit creeped out about him being Martha Kent.
Yeah, and that was a weird
scene.
How
does that not get brought back up later when Lois is like, I'm so glad you came to me that day and got me to get out of my house, and she's like, come again? What are we talking about?
Well, also, I do think that when, Martha steps out of Lois's apartment and then reveals that it's Martian Manhunter, part of me went, well, that just kind of diminished that whole scene between Martha and Lois.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't actually Martha. And because when Martha is talking about how she can't tell people that she's so proud of her son and all that, I'm just going, oh, this is heartbreaking. And then you find out it wasn't even Martha saying it.
Yes and no. So they don't explicitly tell you any of Martian Manhunter's powers in this, but being the Martian Manhunter fan, he is a telepath. So he's channeling Martha. He's clearly been watching the two of them and has kept tabs on them. So it is Martha's thoughts, just through a different mouthpiece. So, but I agree with you in the sense.
I got that.
I agree with you in the sense that the casual viewer is not going to know that, and so it does take away from that a little bit. But yeah, super glad.
What did y'all think of his look?
So in that,
kind of the veiny head.
In that dark hallway scene, it kind of worked in the sense that you just saw the light from the cross, whatever you want to call them. It's kind of like a stylistic thing with him. He has the big yellow crosses across his chest. And I thought that worked in that particular scene, but at the epilogue, when you get him in full Martian Manhunterness, it was a little bizarre. His skull in particular is strangely helmet-like, and it was a little weird, but...
And his eyes, to me, they kind of look like bug eyes.
Yeah. I will be the rare optimistic voice here, and I'm just happy we got him. To be able to put him in the movie finally, I realize it's not the best CGI, but for what Zack, I guess, was given to work with here in the aftermath of the theatrical release, the fact that he got him in there and he looked as halfway decent as he did, I thought was just a cool touch. I hate it wasn't Green Lantern. I don't know how everybody feels about that, but
I'm with you,
still.
So two things there. I don't think this was a reshoot. I think it was an original, and I'm just going off of reports that Ben Affleck did not participate in any reshoots for this cut. So with that in mind, I think it may not have been a reshoot to begin with. But 2, I actually enjoyed that they gave you the Ancient Lantern when you have the flashback scene. I thought that was really cool, that you saw that lanterns had participated in Earth's defense before, and they did acknowledge that. I thought it was pretty neat.
Yeah, and I'll go back to that scene. I do think that the scene with Lois was a reshoot, because I was watching something earlier and they showed the storyboards of what was to be filmed before Zack left the project. So I think that scene of Martian Manhunter being Martha was a reshoot. So
I was just talking about the epilogue scene.
Yeah,
I
the
got
epilogue
you.
scene.
Yeah.
Edit that part out. It's all good.
The scene with Bruce. Okay, so we talked about the Justice League, our heroes, and how much more developed they are. Let's go to Steppenwolf. Was Steppenwolf a better character in this? Was he a better villain? Did they give him more depth?
Man.
Yes,
I say
without
yes,
question.
Yeah, by leaps and bounds. It's not even comparable. He's this depraved conqueror in the first one that you have almost no reason for what he's doing, and I think it's so much more compelling and actually almost sympathetic. He is this fallen from grace character who's trying to earn his way back in, kind of thing. So he had much more motivation that made sense, other than, well, it's a superhero movie and you got to have a bad guy. So the whole thing was just so much more compelling. I did think it was interesting because Laramy had actually talked about seeing the trailers originally. We got more of this version visually, and so we went away from the kind of human looking Steppenwolf that we had with Joss Whedon to this monster. I liked it. I liked the armor. The scene with the...
I loved the armor.
The scene with the Amazons where he flexes and it just crushes the arrows and stuff. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. And when he gets mad, the spikes come out.
Was anybody else excited that we didn't hear him say "mother" one time during this?
Oh my gosh!
Oh man,
where is your mother? Who are we talking about?
So. Yeah, who is that? No, he was done better from character design to motives to just all around better. And even though Chad, and I think you're 100% correct, because we've all been at that point where we've disappointed somebody, and so you know how it feels to try and get back into their good graces. And so at certain points, you kind of feel for. Okay, I get why he's doing what he's doing, which lent a lot more to the story.
We can't talk about a DC movie without making an MCU comparison, of course. So, I mean, that's why Thanos is a great villain, because you almost can understand where he's coming from. His motivation isn't just, I'm evil because I'm evil, kind of thing.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, and that was, you talk about the sympathetic nature you almost have. When he's confronting or being spoken to by Desaad that first time, you almost see like these sad, almost innocent eyes on Steppenwolf.
He's terrified. Anytime he talks to Desaad or Darkseid, he is mortified. And it was just such a, again, with the first one, he's this brutal conqueror for no reason almost. And this one, it was just a whole lot more depth. We keep saying depth, but every character got it.
To kind of flip the script on that, though, I really enjoyed that I felt he was more powerful in the final battle. That was so much more convincing to me, that in battle on both sides. And we'll get into this more once we really start talking about the movie overall. But I thought making him stronger in that fight and like forcing the Justice League characters to, for cliche or whatever, but up their game, it just made for such a better scene.
So there's another thing I like better, and this will get us into, we had another villain in this movie. I loved that in that original battle, it was Darkseid. It wasn't Steppenwolf. I loved that. And to have Darkseid be the one, of course, he's entirely CGI. Of course, so was Steppenwolf. But what'd you think of Darkseid?
It was an enormous addition to the movie. And you clearly saw what they were trying to set up for a sequel movie, which, I'm sure we'll talk about more later. But that made it just so much more better that... and then you have the plot point added with what he finds in that first fight, even though he didn't realize he found it until, Steppenwolf makes the realization later. So very, very cool. And there's a lot of, and for me, it gave like good tie-ins back. So when Steppenwolf makes the comment that Wonder Woman has the blood of the old gods. It's clearly something they would respect. The old gods are the only thing that ever defeated his master. So you have all this depth of plot and character there that's great.
And how about the fact that it was Ares that gives the blow?
Yep. Well, Zack clearly likes to walk that line of, can villains be heroic? I mean, you to really fast forward, we get into the epilogue and the Nightmare. You have both Deathstroke and the Joker having to kind of toe the line, and can they be part of the solution versus always being a bad guy kind of thing.
I think you look at a lot of Zack's movies, and he's constantly blurring that line of who is good and who is bad. And because life itself is not so black and white, everything's kind of in the gray, everything's muddled. He does a good job of making those points in his films.
Just to throw in these characters just real quick, what'd you think of the look of Desaad? Very different from the comic book.
A whole lot different. I wouldn't have known who it was if he hadn't said the name, to be honest with you.
And I kind of thought that was some of the worst CGI. Well, okay, two things. The stone, or I'm assuming it was plutonium or something, they're in a dead reactor.
Yeah.
Like phasing in and out of being being their, whatever you want to call it, hologram machine. That was cool. But the actual CGI of that character in particular I was like, that's a little on the rough side.
Agreed.
Yeah. And what'd you think about at the end seeing Granny Goodness just chilling over there next to Darkseid?
It was a little strange. I wasn't expecting that at the end of the movie.
All right, I do want to throw out another character that had actually a bigger part in this, and that's Mera.
Yeah.
She has a bigger part of this. That battle she has with Steppenwolf. Yes. When she starts sucking the water and blood out of his body.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm a little speechless at that, not going to lie.
Well, and even just that scene where she's talking to Arthur Curry, I enjoyed this version so much better. She is sympathetic and trying to talk to him in a way to bring him back. Whereas in the original cut, she is almost antagonistic with him. She mockingly mentions his mother, all this kind of stuff. And so she's a throwaway character in the theatrical version. This Mera is so much more important. And I'm with you, Laramy. I was totally into seeing her fight Steppenwolf to give Arthur time. We didn't know he was on the way, but to give him time to get in the fight too. That was it was pretty.
Yeah, to your point, Chad, I think in the theatrical version, I felt like that whole scene with Mera was all just, hey, we've got an Aquaman movie coming next, so here's a little sneak peek of what you're going to see. Where this one, it didn't feel that way at all. She was a part of the story that he was telling, not just something shoehorned in for something that's going to come later. So I agree 100%.
Yeah, that organic word keeps coming
and then it
up.
makes it so much better in the epilogue in the Nightmare where she's now part of the team. I love that it's a subtle thing, but the fact that she's carrying 2 tanks of water, so that she can use that ability.
Because she's not a half-breed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, finally, throwaway. I don't think they even mentioned his name until the very end. Ryan Choi.
Yeah.
The Atom.
Yeah. So I'm with Blake on this. I didn't actually get to read as much as I would have liked to post-movie about theories and stuff, but Zack Snyder actually wanted a standalone The Atom movie. He was pitching that at the time, so I don't know if we would have ever actually gotten that, but it's a cool thought.
Well, you talked earlier about having a vision. Like, it is clear with every single thing that happens, he had stuff set up for later on. And it's, again, unfortunate that what occurred, but it makes it such an enjoyable experience because as a fan, you can kind of play out what might have happened in your own mind, like where he was going with this and what would have occurred. And I think it's such a cool thing for him to go back and be able to do that.
Hello, movie viewers and fellow movie lovers. My name is Tim Williams, and I'm the creator and host of Movie Views Presents the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. See, I love the 80s, and I have a great appreciation and nostalgic passion for the classic 80s flicks that birthed my love for movies and ultimately helped shape my childhood. On each episode, I'll discuss, with a special guest co-host of course, a different film from the 1980s. We'll share memories, favorite characters, iconic scenes, and even share some behind-the-scenes stories along the way. We'll discuss famous blockbusters like Raiders of the Lost Ark, Coming to America, Ghostbusters, Dirty Dancing, Top Gun, Die Hard, and many, many more, as well as some other cult classics and even lesser known flicks we discovered on cable TV or the now defunct video rental stores. Remember those? No matter what 80s flick we choose to talk about, we'll always have a good time, so come and check us out. You can find the 80s Flick Flashback podcast on major podcasting platforms like Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and more. Be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss a single episode. Once again, I'm Tim Williams, and I hope you'll join me for the next 80s Flick Flashback.
All right, so let's move into the moving panels. We're not really going to talk about comic book connections. We talked about that in the first one, and really kind of pulled away from some of those comic book connections.
Yeah.
And so there's really not a lot of comic book connections in this Snyder Cut. But I said we were going to talk about it. Let's go ahead and knock it out. That opening scene.
Yes, let's go.
Okay.
Let's talk about that opening scene. We re-see the death of Superman in this 3D looking experience. I want to talk about this real quick. What did y'all think about the aspect ratio? The fact that it's in a 4:3 ratio.
It bothered me at first, but I adapted to it. But there were certain scenes that I wish were widescreen. But I understand he was going for the IMAX theater experience. So if your TV's big enough, I guess it doesn't matter.
So, nerdiness here. So, for those that don't know, I'm pretty big hobbyist into photography, and the human eye sees most closely in a 5:3 aspect ratio. And so he shot this in a 4:3 aspect ratio, which allows the human eye to soak up as much information as possible without overloading, without you searching all over the screen like in a wide angle aspect to find what you're looking for. This gives you a focus and where to look. I thought it was a genius move, especially for a generation who, part of them are watching this, grew up on Instagram, and that's the Instagram aspect ratio was initially 4:3. So I thought it was a cool move, along with it being shot for IMAX. So there's some nerdiness on top of your nerdiness you're already getting here, folks.
I was going to say that was the nerdiest response I've ever heard.
There you go. Hey, yeah, appreciate it.
I appreciate it. I feel like I learned something. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we need the more you know star to now go across.
And knowing is half the battle.
Yeah. How much does it cost to get that star put on here, Laramy?
I was about to say we're losing all kind of licensing money right now. So we got paid G.I. Joe. We got to pay those guys.
All right, so let's go back to that opening. So we get the opening, and then going right into Superman screaming, and the ripple, and
Fantastic.
the fact that they literally make it so that Superman's death ripples across the entire Earth.
And awakens the mother boxes. It is epic. And just, I thought it was cool that it was silence.
You immediately go, this is a bigger, better movie.
Oh, for 100%.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I love how it's shown on everything as everybody kind of inherently understands that something is happening, and then there's just silence. There's this void, and it's so powerful and impactful. You know, musicians talk about that a lot, that like rests can be more important than notes and everything, and that this was very true in that scene.
Yeah, I want to go back to something you said, Larry, about this sets you up to let you know it's an epic film. And I thought about this as soon as it was starting. I said, if you started the first 5 minutes of the 2017 and the first 5 minutes of this one, you can tell from the first 5 minutes what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, which one is... This is a throwaway superhero movie that no one's going to be talking about in a good way in the next 5 years. And here's one that's an epic that will be talked about for a long time. I sound like I'm really blowing it up, but this movie, not just because it's 4 hours, but it held my attention. And I have not wanted to watch anything else since I watched it. Like, I don't want to watch anything else, so I'm going to make me not think about it more.
Yeah.
So it's carried with me, all those things going on. So
and y'all can, I was going to say, y'all can agree or disagree, but the prologue, so I finished the prologue and hit pause for just a second and thought to myself, that was better than the entire 2017 cut just on its own. Yeah. Like, I knew what we were in for at that point in time, to y'all's point. It sets up what you're about to watch, and you knew you were in something. And I agree with you, Tim. It's a movie that, at least for Zack Snyder's catalog, is going to be talked about for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm right there with you, Blake. When that opening finished and it blacks out, and then you get the part one, I'm just going, let's go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's about to go down.
Yeah,
I mean,
know,
it was.
I know we try not to put these two together, but the moment in Endgame when it goes black and you get that, 4 or 6 years later, and the whole theater gasped. When that prologue ended and that screen came, I was like, if I was in the theater right now, I could feel every person around me like, oh my gosh, what are we about to experience? Yeah. Like, I missed having that group moment at that point. So
I was like, can we talk about how much we would have all liked to have been together seeing this in theaters?
Man,
like how awesome that would have been.
Yeah.
Another thing, going into what Chad has been talking about, that you could tell that a lot of these scenes were really just put back these little pieces. Like, they were just clearly cut down. That original battle with Darkseid.
Oh, dude.
I mean, that was epic.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, you guys were talking about how there's these moments that you see the movie that you're going to get. And I thought that was the first time where he proved to us that he's going to bring the team together in the way that we were talking about last week that he never did. And it's small stuff like Flash not being as afraid, him being young and inexperienced, but not necessarily anxious about it, that sort of thing. Yeah. And Diana, you get the Diana you're going to get for the rest of this movie. She is a brutal warrior. And they make her just totally go for it. You get Ray, who's Ray, the actor's name, obviously, but Cyborg, who jumps into it because this is the guy who just caused him extreme pain, and so it was such a better scene. But yeah, just visually, like, it's just a better fight too.
Yeah, and you're talking about the scene initially where Atlanteans and Lanterns and Amazons are all fighting.
I was talking about.
Oh, okay, well, they're all fighting Darkseid. That's setting up this whole theme of teamwork. Like, we're going to get a team to come together. It's even mentioned several times, like, everybody worked together. All these different societies came together. And I'm like, okay, we're going to build a team, and the theme throughout this is going to be, like, the teamwork has to happen in order to achieve what they want.
Okay, to that point, was anyone else somewhat disappointed then when all the mother boxes were being put together and you saw the Atlantans notice and the Amazons notice? I was like, okay, are they all going to merge and join in the fight again? Like, I was almost expecting them to come over the hill at some point. So
would have been cool. Would have been a cool
moment. So a throwback
to
previous episode, though, we did talk about we kind of poked fun at the movie in the sense that it was very Lord of the Ringsy. Was I the only one that thought that they might have actually gone truer to Lord of the Rings with this one? Like that, like
they doubled down on it. For sure.
They even made it more so because you have that scene where the Justice League minus Superman are heading in to find the scene that I was just talking about because I was jumping ahead, but they're going in to find Steppenwolf. You see them kind of go one at a time, and it was almost shot for shot, like from the Lord of the Rings. You're like, here goes the dwarf, here goes the elf. You're kind of. It was, but anyways.
Yeah. But here was something I like too when he's. And I meant to look up who the Green Lantern is supposed to be, because I know it's supposed to be a certain Green Lantern. But when the Green Lantern faces off with Darkseid, and then Darkseid just cuts his hand off, the hand that had the ring on it, and then brutally murders him. Did you find it a little interesting that the ring for a second stops in front of Darkseid?
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm going. Hold up now.
He's reaching out for it, and the ring is not evading him. It was interesting. Yeah, and knowing what we know about Zack Snyder, it meant something. That's not like that wasn't an accident.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't think Darkseid was worthy enough to be in this movie? Well,
there he is.
The ring thinks he's worthy enough. Here's something I jotted down in my notes that I wanted to throw out. What were your thoughts about the Bruce and Diana flirting?
Oh, the awkward mouth scene.
I want more of it. I want all of it.
I didn't mind it.
Meh.
I mean, that was set up in Batman v Superman, so it was a continuation of that story. Now, going to the nightmare scene in the epilogue when they were talking about losing someone you loved, I honestly thought at the beginning he was talking about Diana because she wasn't there with them. And I was like, wait, did they have something and she died? So I had that thought for a second. So
I was just going to say the slight flirting of touching hands on the computer mouse was better than her like rubbing lotion on his back scars or whatever she did in the theatrical cut. Like it was a lot better way to just show that flirtatious relationship than some overt like, hey, they need to be together. It's just, maybe they don't know they need to be together yet, but I love them both and I want them to be so happy with each other.
You can tell Blake and I are Batman fans.
That's right. I need it to happen. I need it to happen, Tim.
So I had to make note. I pulled up my notes from last week and was going through the things that we had mentioned. And of course, one of the things we mentioned in last week's episode was this movie needed to be longer. That's what we got.
Yeah. Yes.
I also pointed out that Chad talked about that one of the best scenes of the movie was when Aquaman accidentally sits on the lasso.
Right,
and he even thought that was a Snyder scene, but
His
that scene was
sources were
nowhere
wrong.
to be found.
Nowhere to be found.
I did kind of miss it, though.
It's okay to give credit where credit's due, right? Like, that was a good scene. I wouldn't have minded to see it in this cut also. So credit where credit is due. It's fine.
Yeah.
It definitely would have felt more out of place in the scope of this one, but it was still it was still a good scene that I missed.
Yeah.
So.
But there were so many jokes taken out of this. Like, I don't think you can
Thank
understate
goodness,
that.
though.
Well, yes and no. I mean, this movie has almost no sense of humor, though. I mean, maybe it doesn't need one, but all the jokes are gone. And for good or bad, I mean, you missed the Flash talking about Pet Cemetery when they raise Superman. Just joke after joke is completely cut. And in certain scenes, I 100% agree with you. The end fight is so much better without Superman making jokes the entire time. That was so out of place. When you watch it again, against this version, it doesn't make any sense. His bizarre, but I also like justice, and punches him in the face. And you're like, how about don't? Just punch him in the face. Like, let's,
We talked about how, and this was a big point we made in last week's episode, how we were given things and then there was no payoff to them. This movie gave us our payoffs. In fact, this movie added a couple. Yeah. Because the gauntlets that we see Alfred working on, and he explains it to Diana what the gauntlets will do. And then we get to see the gauntlets used a couple of times.
Yeah.
And so, love that payoff.
The entire character of
Silas's recording. And going into his dad, the recording, as soon as he starts, now I'm going to talk to you as your father, and then he breaks it. Luckily, at the end of the movie, we get to hear the rest of that tape. We got that payoff. Even the thing with the bat carrier and the fact that Bruce is working on it, and he can't get it to fly, and he can't get it to fly, and then Cyborg shows up, and Cyborg's like, she wants to fly, and he's figuring it out. And it was just so much better that we got introduced to things. They had a build up, and then we got a payoff, and it was so great to see that.
I mean, even just the finale of the movie makes more sense. In this one, you believe that Cyborg is capable of doing what needs to be done to separate the mother boxes. In the other version, you're just like, I guess, he figured it out somehow, kind of thing. So you're 100% right. All those little scenes that we had in the first one that you're just going, okay, what is that even supposed to mean? They were very well done in this one. There was obviously tons more continuity than we had in the previous movie.
And you're talking about the final end scene there and things that got cut. And thank goodness, for my sake, that Joss Whedon, took this family from Sokovia, I guess, and put them in the middle of this nuclear community again. Poor people. They were taken out of the movie. That whole plot where he's got to save them at the end is gone. So I thought that was
and that
excellent.
was also a joke moment to see Superman flying the entire building of people.
Right.
But we didn't need that, and it got taken out. Thankfully.
No, I love that they pretty much just said this is a completely abandoned,
which
village,
made much more sense.
Town. Yeah, that we're just destroying buildings and
with us talking about that end fight scene. It is such a great payoff on what we were talking about earlier about these two previous fights that we see the team build. Previous 3 fights, really, where you see the team being built and the idea of team if you throw in the historical fight and all that kind of stuff. And this movie does such a good job of, in that final fight scene, you can't take any one of those characters out. You need every single one of them to defeat the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes into my point from last week's episode where I said the movie was missing that team-up moment.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And we got it.
We got
right
it.
before they enter,
Yes.
we get that pause.
Yes, was so awesome.
Of all of them, Batman in the Batmobile, and we get that quick pause of all of them right before they go into battle. And then not only that, I talked about how we didn't get any of those like combo moments. We got that. We got where Aquaman and Cyborg did the little where Aquaman throws the trident down to create the blast and Cyborg hits a blast to go through it. I mean, we got that. I think there was even one, even though it's hard to see, where Wonder Woman and Aquaman do a little team up move. And I'm just going, this is what we need, because this, like Chad's saying, this is what's showing them that they need to be able to work as a team. The fact that Cyborg pulling apart the mother boxes required Flash.
Yes.
Yep.
For that
I love
power.
that aspect, yes.
And you do have to go back to one of the hidden jokes, since we were kind of making fun of him for not having any humor. I do love that Bruce Wayne got to say, and Barry, you're going to need to run faster than you've ever ran before. Just the whole idea that that's like Flash's gimmick is every time he needs to run faster to beat this person is one of my favorite Flash things. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I just looked at the overall feel of the movie and some of the things that we talked about last week. Since we keep kind of going back and forth, I think it's fair to mention that most of the Danny Elfman soundtrack is gone.
It's all
Thank
gone.
goodness.
Yeah, that was something I said as much, because I did say in last week's episode I love the soundtrack. I love Danny Elfman, but
This one was better.
Yeah.
Junkie XL, who was behind the music for this one, that music was perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect.
I'm going to use the word again. It was epic. You had epic
It was.
music that was married so well with what we were seeing on screen that it added some of that emotion that we talked about we couldn't get before.
Yeah.
I think it even amplified that in certain moments, especially those epic battle scenes. Phenomenal.
And I'll be the first to admit that as much as I make fun of Zack Snyder's characteristic, very dark, textured worlds, it totally works in this movie. It's kind of funny that they're going to come out with a black and white version, because I felt like that's what I watched. Like, it's there's virtually no color in this movie. It's a very just gritty gray movie. Yeah. But
there were actually
works.
some scenes I'm thinking the black and white version will actually make brighter.
Yeah,
Probably.
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah. But
So talking about the music, the one thing that did bother me, I didn't like a lot of the song choices, not the instrumental, but the actual songs that Zach put in. I'm assuming that it's his choices, but they're all sad and...
So you and Zack Snyder are not going to share a playlist, is what you're saying?
No, probably not.
I was going to say, I went and downloaded every single song that played in the film. I'm not going to lie to you. I love them all.
I'm listening to the lyrics, and I understand lyrically why they're there, and I'm sure it's supposed to be adding the emotion, but after a while, they all start to sound alike, and I felt like it lost some... I began to tune out. So I began to tune out because it began to sound so much alike, where it's like, oh, here's another sad song that sounds like Hallelujah that he's obsessed with because he used it in all of his trailers.
Yeah. Was I the only one that almost jumped out of my seat, though, when Diana got her theme back?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Man. That other version missed that theme alone so much it hurt. Like, it being gone was something you felt viscerally. And I was so happy that came back.
Yeah.
I know we hit it briefly earlier, but I would be remiss to not get the opinions of 3 comic book aficionados. How did you feel about Joker and Batman interacting in the nightmare scene?
Yeah, are we ready to talk about the epilogue?
Look, I need to talk about it.
Oh,
all right,
let's go for it.
So let's go into the epilogue. This is going to be the big thing.
So
to first talk off your thing, this was a better performance of the Joker by Jared Leto.
Oh yeah.
Okay, agreed.
Compared to Suicide Squad.
Right.
This was a much better. I don't know if he was intentionally pulling from some of Heath Ledger's portrayal. Even
if he was, that's fine. I'm good with it. We stand on the shoulders of giants all the time. So if he chose to model it after Heath Ledger, cool. Good for him.
Because I don't know that, again, this is something that you would think I would have paid attention to from the 2017 release, but it caught my eye in the opening credits. I didn't know Christopher Nolan was an executive producer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think he's been on all of them, all of the Zack Snyder movies.
Since the Dark Knight
Man of
trilogy.
Steel,
Yeah, so that was a good time. But I found it interesting. I do think Joker got a little long-winded when he was talking. I kind of went, okay, yeah, we get it.
Was I the only one that also noticed that he did not use the line that was used in the trailer?
Oh, can we talk about the "We Live in a Society" meme that Zack Snyder trolled us all on? Absolutely.
Yeah. It's not in the movie. I was like...
you want to talk about a good marketing ploy, though? Implementing that meme, it ignited social media. And if you don't know the meme, there's a meme with Heath Ledger's Joker. It says, "We live in a society," that's supposed to talk about the aspect of humanity that's not there, whatever. So he implements that, and apparently it was Jared Leto's idea to use that line, and then it causes firestorm of people talking about the movie, and then he pulled it out of the film, which was hilarious.
No, Firestorm's not in this movie. That's going to be...
Sorry. Stargirl. Was that Supergirl's pod open on the ship, by the way? Can we, just for real quick, go back?
Yeah.
Well, that's what... Well, so that was in Man of Steel, and there were actually talks that the open pod in Man of Steel was supposed to be Supergirl's.
Okay, just want to check. Sorry.
Yeah.
Talking about nightmare scene. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, but my personal opinion, I need to see a buddy movie with Batman and Joker traversing a barren landscape together. I see some maybe not agreement there. I want it.
I'm going to go ahead and give my hot topic, so you guys can fight me till the end on this one, but I could have gone without the nightmare scene at the end, honestly. Okay. Well, once again, knowing that if what we know now is true, there's not going to be a continuation of the story, then why show us this to make us go, oh man, why didn't you do it? As much as I talked about in the last episode how I loved the post-credit scene or mid-credit scene or whatever with Slade Wilson, that I wanted to see that movie. They still use that. I liked this version better. But then you jump right to this nightmare where he's teaming up with Batman. I'm like, okay, we've just jumped past the movie we thought we were going to see to something else. So it almost went too far to where now I was like, I just want to enjoy the movie as it was. So
counterpoint, you do have to realize that this was Zack Snyder making the movie that he had a vision for the future. I mean, so you could use the same argument on why is Darkseid in this movie. And, because there's no finality with that. He's coming to invade Earth now, at the end of this movie. Yeah. So it's not the only loose end.
No, I agree with that.
But I do understand in the sense of that, and that was a criticism I have of the nightmare scene from BVS, because if you don't understand the comic book, it makes zero sense. It is definitely something where you have to have some comic knowledge for this post-apocalyptic scene to make any sense for you.
So talking about, let me try and help my point here of wanting a Batman Joker movie and making the connection to our moving panels here. There's a run with Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo called Last Night on Earth, where Batman traverses this barren landscape with the Joker's head inside of essentially a lantern. And the back and forth and repartee in that comic book that Scott Snyder wrote, I feel like would translate so well in certain aspects to the big screen. And I hate that we may not get that. So if you haven't read Last Night on Earth, everybody, you need to check it out. It's really good. But that's what makes me think it would be awesome to see these two characters now in the same universe have those moments together.
I do, to your credit, want to see what Batman has planned for Joker, in the sense of, you get the feeling that Joker is being put up to kind of a self-sacrifice, kamikaze moment.
He's there for a reason.
Yeah.
He's not there to fight. He's there for a reason.
Right.
Yeah.
So what is he carrying, or what is he supposed to do that's going to, I guess, end or at least nullify Superman? But I think
he says, "You need me."
Yeah, but I think we are at the end of that journey. The journey across the wasteland's over. Superman has found them. It's about to go down. So
yeah, I did like that Joker had all those deputy badges. Like
that was it was a cool look.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
And the Batman, make no mistake, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
I'm going to explicit kill you.
Yeah, exactly.
That was very clear. So with that epilogue, because I kind of agree with Tim. Part of me was like, why put this in here and tease us with this?
Is Zack Snyder making his pitch?
That's my thing.
Fingers crossed.
So there has, since the movie has been released, even when it was released to people who got to see it in advanced screenings, there is now, before it was the release the Snyder Cut movement, now we're going into
continue the Snyder-verse.
It's not revive.
Restore the Snyder-verse.
That's it.
Yeah.
Restore the Snyder-verse.
Yeah, and
I'm all for that. All for that.
He's even talked about, though, in a couple of his interviews where, he now has zero interest in doing he has no drive to do another comic book movie, he stated. But the second thing is that he and his wife both have said, look, this is the movie we were going to do all along. We were going to stick to that, regardless of whether it was going to be a second one. This was the vision. We wanted everybody to see what we wanted to do.
Yeah, to play devil's advocate, I would imagine it would be hard as a human being to not get a little bit energy back with the with the outpouring of love that has come. I mean, guys, we've spent over an hour and a half doing nothing but talking about how great this is.
Right.
So, and we're not the only ones. So, that has to even do something to him.
Even going back to the one shot from a couple of weeks ago that Chad, Blake, and I did about is Zack Snyder a good director?
I want to talk about
it. We ultimately said yes, but throughout that episode, we're making the point. It's real in terms of superhero movies. It's really going to come down to the Snyder Cut. Mm-hmm. And now that the Snyder Cut has hit, I'm just going. I need more Zack Snyder DC.
Yeah,
I really do.
Yep,
I agree.
Yeah, I think you need more Zack Snyder DC with the reins taking off of him.
Yes,
so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Clearly, he knows what he wants to do and what he's doing. Let him do it.
Yep. Well, knowing that, I think I saw today that HBO Max crashed when it was first released. Mm-hmm. So you've got that going for HBO Max and Warner Brothers. I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to hand him a bunch of money to say, we've got to keep this going, because especially eventually theaters are going to open up back again. And as we talked about, seeing this in a theater setting would have been magnificent.
Oh, man.
So,
and it's not unprecedented.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Disney had to go back to James Gunn and back up trucks of money to his house when they realized that they needed him for Guardians. So stuff happens, and I think that to the guys at Warner Brothers, money talks. To Zack Snyder, the outpouring of love for his vision is going to be powerful.
Yeah,
right. I could very for sure see more Zack Snyder movies coming in the DC universe.
Right, and what we saw up to this point, that the actors, Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Ray Fisher, all of them, they wanted him to continue it as well. Of course, they all had to suffer through all the reshoots of what it became, but he's got their support as well. So that's one thing. You've got the studio, you've got the original actors that would want to do it, and you've got the fans. I mean, what else do you really need besides a vision and passion? But I think that would come back as well.
And whether it's true or not, I'm not really sure, but I've read several times where a lot of the actors said, hey, if we need to reshoot, we will do it for free. To finish this out and do it correctly, we're willing to come aboard for free. So I'm sure you'd be willing to come aboard for money as well. If somebody's going to pay you to actually do it, I'm sure you'd come aboard.
Yeah. But ultimately, we talked about last week, we watched the 2017 theatrical cut, and we just didn't feel anything watching it. Whereas we've talked about, like Chad said, for the last hour and a half, we've talked about how pumped up we got, talked about things that gave us chills, even while we've talked about it. I've gotten chills every now and then rethinking about some of these scenes. And it's just so much more better. Oh, my goodness. I want them to restore the Snyder-verse. I want to see this play out. With all that being said, I want to go back. Lois. She opens up the drawer to the desk.
Yes.
And we see...
Yes.
We see...
Pregnancy test.
The pregnancy test. Hey everybody, I'm just going to cut in real quick. We're starting to talk about Lois's pregnancy test, and it didn't come to our attention until after we recorded that the name of the pregnancy test, although may have been a little Easter egg placed there by Zack Snyder, he may not have thought it all the way through as to some of the implications that name could imply. My wife Bethany is going to join us here to kind of give her 2 cents on the matter.
So I'm going to call this Raging Feminism Corner. It's a little toasty over here. So force majeure is a law term. It means unforeseen circumstance.
Yeah, so the name of the pregnancy test is called force majeure.
Oh, yeah.
And we found out that that's a law term that means an unforeseen circumstance in which a person is not able to fulfill their contract. So pretty much it just legally allows them to walk away and break their contract because of a certain situation. Now, we understand that could very much be in reference to Zack Snyder having to leave the original Justice League due to the tragic family event that caused he and his wife to depart from the original movie.
And I even understand, like, putting it outside of that. I understand putting it on the pregnancy test to symbolize that because it was his child. And that's a horrible, awful thing to go through. And so this is not in any way implying that I think he's terrible for putting it on this pregnancy test. However, the term unforeseen circumstance, and even in those terms of just like, it's a contract that you can break, it's so loaded, it puts this burden, this shame on Lois that she really doesn't have. And yet it's like this outside burden, this pointing finger almost, which a lot of time comes with a woman who's pregnant, who's not married, of saying like, oh, guess you weren't careful enough. And he doesn't have to sign the deal or seal the deal because, you know, that whole why buy the cow if you can get the milk for free nonsense that is from the 1950s that people still lean on. And, you know, it's a lot to put on the shoulders, even if it's a silent moment, even if it's just 2 seconds in this 4-hour-long movie. It's basically the only thing we know about Lois during this movie. She's not working, she's pregnant, and it's a force majeure.
Yeah, so ultimately, although we get that it might be just that little Easter egg that Zack Snyder put on it, if you really break down the translation of force majeure to the unforeseen circumstance, to superior force, which is how it actually literally translates to French.
Right.
You break it down into the Latin, and it breaks down into a chance occurrence or an unavoidable accident.
Ew.
It just doesn't actually sit right to be the name of a pregnancy test.
Especially since, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of big fans of the movie that do know this information about Zack Snyder. It's not something I was completely aware of. And just outside of knowing, like, you have to know so much of the whole story for this 2 seconds to not be gross. And it brings up the idea of there's this point, especially not all the time, but a lot of times with white male directors. They reach a level of fame, a level of notoriety, and you can't say no to them. It feels like people can't say no to them. So they do stuff, and it's like nobody gives them a once-over. Nobody goes behind them and says, you know, maybe we don't do that here. It's something that a lot of female directors of color don't get that opportunity. Those directors don't get that chance to fail, those second chances. So yeah, so I feel like it's just one of those moments where the implications are there. It's not great. It's gross. I get what they meant by it. It is us sitting back and saying like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. But it's a 4-hour movie. That's all we know about Lois. It puts this level of blame on her that sucks. What do you think? I
mean, again, I think that it was not meant in ill will.
Yeah.
I do think that it was just the way that he thought to put in kind of that nod. As we have talked about, and you hear throughout this episode, we talk about a lot of things that we know that Zack Snyder probably put in there just as his little nods to being able to come back and do the other movie, and little nods to Warner Brothers messing up his original movie. But Bethany and I felt that this was just something we wanted to address, to know that it didn't go ignored. We just wanted to point that out because we just felt that maybe it was a bad decision to allow it.
Poor taste.
Allow it to be the name. It could have been the name of something else, but to allow it to be the name of the pregnancy test, we think was just a little problematic.
You could even, I said this, I went back and forth discussing this with Chad earlier. It could have gone anywhere that you could have made the point in any other way, and it still would have made sense, and it wouldn't have had these burdens, these layers that we're left with in this 2-second shot in a 4-hour movie. I don't know why it bothers me so much, but it really does.
Again, we just wanted to bring that to your attention. If you didn't notice it, we felt that it was something that deserved to be said. So thank you, Bethany.
Thank you.
And then we see her, we don't actually see her pick it up, but then we see her step into a side room, which looked like the placement of a bathroom.
Okay, I'm going to wait.
And you have Bruce Wayne, who at the end of a conversation with Superman says, "Oh yeah, and congrats."
Yeah.
Congrats, yes. Is he talking about the engagement? Or is he talking about something else?
So do y'all want spoilers for stuff that's never going to happen? Or
well, no, I've read...
So you've read what he said.
I've read Snyder's synopsis, but there was no illusion. Lois was still dedicated to Clark in this movie.
That's clearly a result of the bathtub scene in BVS, right? Like, we get that, don't we?
Yeah. So for people who don't know what me and Blake are talking about, Snyder did release his synopsis for Justice League 2 and Justice League 3. And in that one, it does do a little bit of into the future, and Lois and Bruce have developed a relationship, and Lois eventually becomes pregnant with Bruce Wayne's child. I do not think that's what they were alluding to in this movie, because again, this movie was very clear that Lois was still dedicated and, in love with Clark.
Yeah.
So it clearly, if they're going to have the little pregnancy test, and like Chad said, if that line at the end was, I heard congratulations are in order, are they going towards the birth of Jonathan Kent?
Yeah, another thing Snyder has stated, that the plan now would have been to have that be Lois and Clark's son. In the future, Batman dies, and Bruce Kent would be their child, and he takes up the mantle as Batman, which I thought would have been a cool arc to see as well. So a lot of things could have played out, and I'm like Laramy, # restore the Snyder-verse. Put it back together.
I'm all for it. All right. I think we're ready. It's time. And it's going to be, you want to talk about, we're going to jump to a complete polar opposite here. Let's bag it, stack it, or trade it.
Do you even have to ask us?
Y'all all three, the 2017 version, y'all all three said to trade it. I said to stack it just because I'm a big Justice League fan, and I said this was...
back and forth,
Yeah, I was on the fence, but I did say stack it because this was, as I said in last week's episode, this is my way to see the Justice League. This is currently my only way to see the Justice League. It's not my only way anymore. All right, so here we go. Again, just like I did last time, I'll go based off of the way I see you guys on my screen. So, Chad, bag it, stack it, or trade
Kudos where kudos are due. Blake had faith in this movie and called it last time around, and was trading for a yet unreleased Snyder Cut.
There we go.
Right.
It is for sure a bag it. This was a great movie.
Welcome aboard, Chad.
All right, Tim, what say you?
Bag it, frame it, put it on the highest shelf that no dog, cat, child will ever touch. It's fantastic. I have to bag it.
Blake?
I have already bagged this, sent it off for grading, and it has come back Jim Mint 10. I say it. This was a completely different movie, like we've talked about. It was fantastic from start to beginning. We said kind of in between here, it felt like an hour and a half movie that was 4 hours long. It was so good. It just clipped by. I was never bored. Bag it, keep it, hold on to it forever. It's his masterpiece at this point in time for me.
Yeah, no, I will admit, and I'm just going to go and say I'm bagging it as well. I'm right there with Blake. This is one that I would buy 2 copies of it, one to never be touched,
there you go.
And then the other one to be the one that I use. But I was in the same boat. Like Blake said, it's 4 hours, but it is 4 hours that you are invested in from beginning to end. And people who want to complain about the length, if you take out that epilogue, well, not the entire epilogue, but the maybe the nightmare part, you take out maybe a few seconds of some of the slow-mo scenes,
right.
You'd probably lose, about 30 minutes of the movie. That's exactly how long Endgame is.
Yeah.
This movie is 30 minutes longer than Endgame, give or take a couple minutes. So, but no, definitely so much so a bag it. It is amazing the complete 180 that this movie did. Yep. I'm a fan of the unpopular opinion. I like the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, but I like the director's cut of it.
Okay.
There is a director's cut. I like the director's cut, but all the director's cut it's like this subplot that got cut out of the theatrical version, and it just helps the cohesiveness of the story. We're talking here about almost a completely different movie. Yeah. Even with some of the same scenes and same moments, the way that they brought scenes back in and they recut some scenes, whatever they did, this is a completely different movie. And it is just, to me, the best DC movie that has been made in recent years.
Probably have to agree with that.
I think it's better than Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
I think it's better than Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
We talked about last week that Wonder Woman was the pinnacle of the DCEU.
Yeah.
I'm putting this as currently the best movie from the modern day DCEU. I will never put anything above Superman the movie. So there you go.
And that's your unbiased opinion, right, Laramy?
No, yeah, there's nothing behind that at all.
As he sits in a room surrounded by Superman
memorabilia. Superman.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, any last thoughts, any last words any of you want to give?
Well, you were talking about the length, and I've had this thought back and forth, but we've all watched it in its entirety. Going back to watch it, would you ever just watch it section by section and take breaks and see if it's a different experience? Or will you always just watch it?
I did tell you I watched the straight 4 hours and 2 minutes today.
Well, I know you did that because that's
right
how much time you had before we recorded. But
didn't hit pause the entire time. Straight 4 hours and 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's like I said, I went straight through watching it on mine and enjoyed the experience. Saw the snacks, saw the candy. But my last thought is, if anybody finds out where I can get a high-resolution print of Batman standing on the Dark Knight Returns tank towards the end of the movie, I want it, need it. Somebody send that to me. That was an epic shot of epic shots. A beautifully cinematographed, filmed, or whatever. Zack Snyder produces beautiful imagery, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love how the guy who's all about photography didn't know the word to use for
cinematography. I blanked on it. I can tell you about the 5:3 aspect ratio of the human eye, though, Laramy. So take what you can get, man.
No, I mean we finally got the Justice League movie we had all wanted. I mean, I don't think there's a lot more to say about that. It's amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, thank you, Chad. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Blake. This definitely, I mean, it was almost just perfect for us to unite for the original and then be able to come back to unite for this one because it was even more epic. And so thank you guys. It was great. And thank you for listening. Again, this was meant to be a one-shot. This was meant to be a short episode of just our reaction. But as soon as that movie finished, I was like, no. This is going to be another full episode. So, I've gone in. This will not be titled a one-shot. This will be titled as the next episode, full episode. But thanks, everybody. And follow us on social media. Great way to keep that conversation going and keep in touch with us. The show is at Moving Panels, whether you're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok. I actually posted a reaction as soon as I finished watching it yesterday on TikTok, so you would have already had an idea of what I felt. Look, if you haven't gotten the chance yet to sit and watch it, obviously if you listen to this, we spoiled a lot, but it's still worth the watch. Go watch it. But thank you for listening, and for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Dude.